Hello. Oh, there I am. So I suppose I'm here now. Hi. Welcome to my tiny box. Uh, I decorated to the best of my ability, which is limited. Good evening. And thank you for joining us. For those of you who are here and are trickling in from your various tiny boxes. My name is Kevin Kantor. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. And tonight we're going to read some poems from my debut full length collection of poetry, Please Come Off Book. And it's also over there. And it's here in my real life hands. And I just want to extend a very, very sincere thanks to the Milwaukee Repertory Theater for hosting this event, to No Studios for co-sponsoring, and to Button Poetry, who hosts and publishes my book. In addition, to the books of the wonderful guests that you will also be hearing from tonight, Dave Harris and Bianca Phipps. And I'm incredibly grateful to them for sharing some work with us this evening as well. I asked them specifically because they too are poets working at the intersection of poetry and theater. And that's very much what this book, Please Come Off Book, is about. So my relationship to the Rep, I was an actor there for the first time 2 seasons ago. If you're not counting this weird liminal virtual season we've had, I played Mia in the American premiere of Things I Know to Be True by Andrew Bovell, directed by Mark Clements. Shout out to you, Mark. And also last season, Casey in The Legend of Georgia McBride, directed by Meredith McDonough. And I am really thrilled to be back at the Rep through the power of the interwebs to share some poems with you tonight. Before I get to it, a little bit about how Please Came Off Book came to be. So the year after I graduated with my undergraduate degree in acting, I went on a 9-month poetry tour. I essentially bounced across the country, reading poems, and I organized the whole thing myself. I mean, there was a week on the tour in which a single week had a show in Bellingham, New York, Los Angeles, and Baton Rouge, in that order. So an experienced tour manager I was not. And after that year of doing poetry, after graduating with a degree in acting, I missed theater. And there's sort of this like phrase that gets touted a lot by theater educators and practitioners, which is, if you can do anything else, do that. But I think when they say that, they don't necessarily have performance poetry in mind. And I also think that when they say that, it's under the guise of like self-care and preservation. But really what they're saying is, like, you understand that a career in the arts is sort of co-signing to this toxic industry that will often disregard you and, pit you against the peers that you're meant to be collaborating with due to a scarcity model that is imposed by a government that doesn't value its artists. But I missed theater. So I auditioned to be an acting apprentice at the Actors Theater of Louisville. And I was the first non-cis acting apprentice in the company's 40 or so year history. And my experiences there, and most of the ones I can trace back to that, working in regional theater as a non-binary theater artist, is what inspired Please Come Off Book. The phrase Please Come Off Book is an industry term that means show up to the first rehearsal memorized. And I found when entering those spaces, I was often being asked to do a lot of labor before showing up as a means to feel as if I had earned my spot there. Things like, please come prepared to educate us. Please come prepared to make sacrifices in regards to your personhood for the sake of our artistic vision. Please come prepared to accept the limited narrative value that we will place upon you in service to what we've been told and taught are the stories that bodies like yours are able and allowed to inhabit. And this book says, fuck that. Let's read some poems. Okay. I'm going to start with the first poem in the collection because that feels like a very good place to start. I like titles. This is a long one. This is called I'm Not Necessarily Saying It Means Anything, but the two VHS tapes I wore out as a child were the 1954 filmed stage production of Peter Pan starring Mary Martin and Shelley Duvall's Fairy Tale Theater presents Pinocchio starring Paul Rubens. In one story, a not yet boy carved from wood. In the other, a forever boy crowed by a woman. In both stories, a father and a fairy. And I want this to be an ode to my wings, the ones I wore until the fabric yawned holes in its webbing while I sat cross-legged in front of the glowing screen. But we must first start with the theater magic, the visible strings, the spark paper, the full-grown man in a crocodile suit, and the full-grown woman playing Peter. The magic that showed its hand like a bold offer to believe anyway. My small hands feverishly believing even after the 100th time the credits rolled. And I want this to be an ode to my wings, the ones I floated down the stairs in, one hand tracing the banister's backbone, the other holding tight to my glitter wand. But we must first start with the fathers. Geppetto, who wished upon a star for a son and was answered with deceitful driftwood. George Darling, who suspiciously resembles a one-handed pirate in Act 2. Both fathers, chasing after a boy until they find themselves in the belly of a metaphor made manifest by some waterborne beast. And I want this to be an ode to my wings, the ones some parent or other tossed without thinking to ask, figured I had outgrown my childish defiance of gravity. And perhaps it was then, tink expiring in the background, my hands too busy tearing through my chest of toys for any way to get airborne, that the soft bark of my body realized. The very strings Pinocchio was told kept him from becoming a real boy were the same ones that allowed Peter to fly. That to become a real boy meant snipping strings, clipping wings, walking down the stairs. A poem. We read our first poem, and it is very bizarre to do it within the confines of this small box, not being able to see you or hear you. I hope that was something that you enjoyed and resonated with you very, very deeply in your soul. I'm going to wet my whistle. I am having whiskey in a cup. That is my beverage of choice this evening. I encourage all of you to get comfortable from whatever device you are tuning into. Cozy on up, and as my dear friend Will Wilhelm says, which I love, feel free to kick off your shoes, unless, of course, it is essential to the look. You dig? So that first poem, I had shared it with a few folks, and I did not realize just how much of a shared queer experience the 1954 film stage production of Peter Pan and Shelley Duvall's Storytale Theater was. And a lot of queer folk hit me back being like, oh my God, you all watched that till it wore out as well. And I was thinking about like why that is a shared queer experience for youth. Not necessarily only queer folk, but like certainly I have come across that. And I think it's this idea of fairy tale and mythos. My favorite theater is the theater that insists on magic, insists that whatever story we're telling, demand that it be a shared live experience in some way. And often theater magic is the way in which I think it achieves that. It ticks that box. And also I think what's incredibly queer about those stories is this idea of the possibility of transmogrification, of transformation from the seemingly mundane or banal into something extraordinary. I think that's very queer. So this next poem is my own fairy tale, a fairy tale that I wrote for myself about me, about my time at the University of Iowa, which is a short-lived experience. And this is called Once Upon a Time in Iowa. And just so you know, feel free to drop questions, comments in the chat. They'll be forwarded to me. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have about these pieces. Again, Once Upon a Time in Iowa. To be clear, this is a fairy tale, as in it happened long ago or out of time entirely, and it probably didn't go down exactly like this, but we tell the story anyway. Maybe we'll learn something. So, once upon a time in Iowa, a once upon a time boy lived locked away in a high tower, or a state school's freshman residence hall, occupied by trolls, or the junior varsity lacrosse team, when he met a warlock in a lecture hall. Turns out the warlock was the boy's TA for, let's say, history of magic, or introduction to the English major, whatever. Cliff Notes is, the warlock was handsome and lived above a pizza shop, troll-free. And the boy had been looking to magic himself into any body but his own. So he moved in. Problem is, the boy cried a lot. Something about a mother trapped in another dimension, a brother and sister made of glass, and the warlock loathed crying. But the boy could not stop. He would weep along the banks of the Iowa River, and as the bodies of dead swans caught in its current would wash ashore, frozen relics of flight, he would try to thaw them with his tears, wondered if these birds were once boys with warlocks of their own, learned a spell to keep from crying, but didn't consider the cost, traded feeling for flying before flinging themselves over the edge of the Burlington Street Bridge. Why can't I ever remember what happened next? I remember the warlock left for a centaur on the track team that definitely did not cry. I remember the boy tried to love a goat shepherd, but couldn't. I know the boy learned about white privilege in a class taught by a lesbian who wore dragon hide. There's a part of the story in which the boy lies about home so many times that all of his family photos erupt in flames. He eventually skipped town in a rusty chariot or a Subaru Outback. There is never mention of a cornfield or a sunrise. I don't remember at what point the boy stopped crying, or if he ever did. But in the end, I believe, the boy discovers some new magic, or language, not powerful enough to bring any of the swans back to life, but he grows his own feathers and survives it. That is Once Upon a Time in Iowa. A fairy tale, if you will, for myself. So, one second. How are y'all doing? I can't see any of you. That's okay. We're all here together in this liminal space. My first time at the rep, like this last poem, was in some ways feels like an origin story for me. When I joined the cast of Things I Know to Be True, it was the first time in my career as a trans non-binary actor where I was getting to play a trans and gender expensive role. And I can't understate, or overstate rather, the significance of that for me. And to that end, the Milwaukee rep will always feel like something of an artistic home for me. It was also the first time in my career that I was in a show playing a family. You know, the actors that made up that Price family, my mother, father, brother, and sisters, I can't explain to you the experience that I had with that cast. The Price family still regularly messages one another on a group text. And I miss them terribly every day. And this next poem is dedicated to them. And more specifically, Bill Geislinger, who played my father. Yeah, that's all I'll say about this piece. Yes. But Jordan Baker Kilner, Zach Pfeiffer, Alban Hegley, Kelly Faulkner. Yeah, forever. This is called The Man Playing My Father. While rehearsing a scene, the man playing my father sits with me at our kitchen table. I have just come out to him, and he is begging me against our rich imagined history. The oak tree in the backyard, the snow-shoveled path to the rose garden, an oversized blue sweater, to take it back. And then the fiction falls away. The tree, 3 wooden crates, the stone path, and our kitchen taped outlines on the rehearsal room floor. And he is again just the man I met 2 weeks ago in a city neither of us have ever called home. When we reach the end of the act, we drift back to ourselves with someone else's tears still in our eyes, straddling the divide between a fabricated familiarity and cheap green room coffee. While rehearsing a scene, the man playing my father calls me beautiful, as he is scripted to. And because he is very good at his job, or perhaps because we have so far suspended our disbelief in accepting our kitchen is made of tape, I believe him. I can see the roses through the frosted window where there are no roses or window, and so here, I am beautiful. And then the fiction falls away. While rehearsing a scene, the man playing my father misgenders me, as he is scripted to, and I need not conjure a snowstorm indoors to make this real. To so many, to my own father, my gender has always been the tape on the floor. Uncomplicated boundaries I naively imagined to mean something more. When we reach the end of the act, I am still trans and fatherless all over again. After rehearsing a scene, the man playing my father says, "You're brilliant." And for a moment, I assume he is running his lines. And then the man playing my father hugs me. And he is again just a man, offering me a tenderness stranger than fiction. This man, who could not know how long I have spent rehearsing for a moment such as this, calls me beautiful, off script. And would you believe? I believe him. Yes, that is the man playing my father. For Bill Geislinger and that whole cast, who I miss and love dearly. I don't know if any of y'all had a chance to see Things I Know to Be True, or if you're familiar with the play. If you are not, I highly encourage you read it. It's brilliant. And it was such a gift that was the first time I got to share stage and space with the Milwaukee community. So in addition to my stage families, who I miss so much, obviously in the life of the panini we're going through, the global panna cotta, I've just taken to calling it food words. I've been home. I'm currently on the floor of my basement bedroom in Boulder, Colorado. I live with my brother and his wife and my 2 nephews. So that is, my actual family that I've been spending time with. And I wanted to read a poem that's actually not in the book. This is the first poem that I wrote after I finished the book, as I was here home, living with my nephews and my family. And it borrows a line, a mantra, a piece of advice from one of my dear mentors, Ken Arkind, about poetry and art, that is featured elsewhere in the book, but it makes a refrain in this poem as well. This is an ekphrasis or an ekphrasis. I'm never sure where the stress, the syllabic stress goes. I also always want to put stress on the ass as it goes. But an ekphrasis, what have you, I'm a poet, is essentially a poem that is inspired by a piece of visual art. And that is what this poem is. And it is called hand turkey ekphrasis. With his tongue perched on his bottom lip, poised like a paintbrush in search of its palette, my nephew traces his hand with the practiced specificity of a true artist, maneuvering the chocolate tip of his scented magic marker through the grooves of his fingers as if making his way out a maze, and I am amazed. The giggles that bubble over like a warm broth as he gives his thumb a beak, crafts two crude sets of talons where his wrist should be. Look, uncle, he says. A turkey, he says, with a smile that is its own masterpiece. And until this moment, I too perhaps subscribe to the commonly held belief that kids are shit at art. Usually lack perspective in the literal sense. You know, the family dog is as big as mommy, is as big as the house, and that amorphous blob is patently not what mommy looks like. But my nephew says, look, a turkey, and holy shit, it is. Because he says so. Because he believes in his hands and what would not have existed without them. And here, a lesson. How often have I lost myself in my own hands and thought, you stupid flightless birds, you good-for-nothing dry meat, you flapping, but never lift off. What art could you possibly hatch? What words flocking in your mouth ever amount to more than a gobble? Paltry, poultry, poetry. But my nephew says, look, a turkey. And I don't for a second doubt him or his feathered fingers, because he says so, because he believes it. Art is not good or bad. Art is honest or it is not honest. Honestly, my nephew's hands are a poem, and all of my poems are turkeys. Hand turkeys. I read that to an Australian friend of mine, and he had no idea what the fuck I was talking about. He's like, what are you? Anyway, that is the end of my first set, and I'm going to welcome on our first guest, which I'm super excited about. And I was given permission to not read official bios, but rather introduce them to, as I would if I were introducing them at a party, which is super casual and colloquial. So what I will say about the incredible Dave Harris is that Dave Harris and I both came up together in the spoken word slam scene. And I believe the first time that we met was at the College Union's Poetry Slam Invitational, hosted at CU Boulder in 2014. And I'm not sure if we were in the same bout or if I just saw one of his bouts, but I remember seeing him for the first time, not knowing him, meeting him via his poetry and being like, oh, fuck. Not only is the writing tight, but that is a performer. And funnily enough, our entire Cupsy team is made up of actors. And I was like, what's going on? Turns out, of course, Dave is a prolific playwright and at the time was at Yale studying as a theater practitioner. We crossed paths a lot, but I followed him as he's become an incredible playwright that is getting a lot. Well, I know a lot of some work was postponed due to the pandemic, but super exciting work. I saw his play Everybody Black at the Humana Festival at Actors Theater of Louisville and was just blown away. So I'm super excited to share the work today and share stage and space with Dave Harris. Take it away, Dave.
Oh, snap. I was on mute. Okay. What's up, y'all? Oh, my God. I'm Dave Harris. I'm so excited and happy to be here for Kevin and the debut of their book. First books are always so exciting. I just remember like when my first book was coming out through Button, it's just like this crazy time. And then you add this little Panera Bread that we're in right now, and just everything's wild. And it's also just thinking back to when we met at Cupsy, and then it was like a Denver Poetry Slam. It's just, I just love following people. And this is, it's just an honor to be here for this. Okay, cool. So I'm going to read a couple poems, like two probably, and then we're going to get back to Kevin and their poetry. The first poem, this is the fucked up thing about Zoom readings, or not StreamYard, whatever one right now. My cat like always shows up during poems, so like he's just gonna pop up. He's just gonna be here. I can't do anything about it. So just hold in the back of your head that there's a cat behind me right now. As I read this poem called "And the Dog Say to the Cat." And the dog say to the cat, do they take you for walks? What games do you play with them? Yesterday, we played fetch. They threw the ball to impossible heights, and I got it every time. They love me. I don't see you out here. You're too small to be loved. Watch me stand on 2 feet and make this whining noise, and if I do it hard enough, they'll give me a treat, or the scraps from their table, or at least a laugh. They love me. I lick peanut butter from their skin. They parade me at dinner parties, roll over, sit, stand, fetch, speak, be quiet, good boy. They love me. I always clean my plate. And the cat say to the dog, I only purr when it suits me. At night, I climb the shelves and plot jumping claws first into their eyes. Last night, their children played a game called Kick the Cat. You won't ever catch me playing dead. I've seen this house from all angles enough to know that we are both servants here. Let me own what I can. Let them clean my shit. Nothing will forget the taste of my hair. I don't really like dogs. I feel like I don't like that there's like a cat dog binary, and also if there must be, I just don't understand the hyper. I don't understand unconditional love. My love is so conditional, so that's why I have a cat and not a dog. What do I want to read next? Listening to Kevin's amazing poems has me wanting to read a little tender poem too. So this poem is called "My Father's Hands." What I didn't know was that while I was being born, I got stuck inside of my mother. The doctor had to use a cone and a tube to vacuum me into the world. The pressure from the tools squeezed my soft head into the shape of a triangle. In the weeks following my birth, my father would hold my naked body in the shower and gently massage the rough corners of my skull, almost managing to right the disfigurement. He tells me this in a story, in a letter he writes 22 years after my mother and her baby fled his home. And now I understand that the odd head I've lived with isn't the result of genetics. It's a wound. How little I knew of all my father's hands could do. Those are 2 short little things. Oh, you know what I'm gonna do? Hold up, because you were talking about it. Let's get a little ekphrastic poem up in here. Yeah. Okay. I think it's ekphrastic is the adjective form, and ekphrasis is the noun form. So like the poem is an ekphrasis, and the ekphrastic is like is the adjective that we will put in front of the word poem. So like ekphrastic poem, ekphrasis. I think. I don't know my shit. It's fucking Latin, Greek. It's fucking poetry. I saw that. It's funny that in the chat someone just wrote, "Your dad is awesome." This book is called Patricide. No, he ain't. That's the one tender poem that he got. Okay, but the epigraph for this poem is inspired by a Black poet named Felrath Hines, and the epigraph for the poem is: the painter Felrath Hines wanted his imagery to remain universal and not to be seen as having relevance exclusively to Black social causes or to African Americans. As a result, he refused to participate in the Whitney Museum of Art's landmark exhibition, Contemporary Black Artists in America. This poem is called Universal Experiences. Y'all see that light that's going out? My cat just bit through my ring light. See? Anyway, Universal Experiences. Draw straight black lines on sharp white linen. Right angles and boxes to separate the colored space from the clean fabric. Dry red liquid enclosed in black, surrounded by white squares on a rectangle. The body is a box. The body goes in a box. Everybody knows the names of the boys who I now assume are buried in boxes. A box is just colors and lines and right angles on fabric. There's nothing to art but imagination. Everyone has that. Think about it. The wallet is a gun. The cell phone is a gun. The hands raised and open is a gun. He reached for the paintbrush and drew, bang. A child died on canvas. I am not a black artist, I am an artist. No, I am not an artist, I am black. No, I am not black, everyone else is white. No, I am clean, the canvas is dirty. My paranoia taught me to see the color in everything. Every word has its tone. Do you think precision can protect you? A balanced stanza. Don't play the music too loud. Paint with an open hand. The world is defined before you. I can lose and find myself in shapes. The artist stands outside and draws the lines. The reader fills them. Imagine if white were a color too. Draw straight white lines on sharp colored linen. Erase the whites and find the natural, where we all began. Like the Big Bang or jazz, first there was nothing, and then everything. Oil paint on history. Imagine how it might look to step away and blend with our bright boxed universe. Cool. That's my 3 poems. Get off that. Get off that. Okay. Damn. Okay. Oh, Kevin, I'm done. You can come back. Look at this. My cat just bit through this shit. I'm so now.
That is wild. You were busy in a moment, and little homie came in.
Look at this.
That is ridiculous.
That's one bite.
That's some strength.
Yeah, I'm gonna
strength in the bite. I'm so sorry. I appreciate it. I'm so happy that you're here. And I am mourning your ring light. R.I.P. your ring light. Thank you for gift us with the name of your book again.
It's called Patricide. I would get it, but I just threw it at my cat. It's called Patricide. Yes.
What are you up to during this Panera Bread?
What am I up to? Yeah, I had the whole year and a half of my life planned around theater, and every show got postponed. Right. So now I live in LA, and now I just write for film and TV, which is cool. It's like a nice little pause. But that's what my life would look like now, sort of just writing movies, which is
fantastic. But I'm not wrong in that you have an upcoming show at the Roundabout.
Yes, except it got postponed again till March 22 because they have to rebuild their entire AC system.
Cool.
Yes.
Got to keep those patrons nice and chilly.
Yes. Yeah. Got to get the fresh air. When theater is back, though, Roundabout and Polaris Horizons, sometime in the vague future.
That's what's up. And where can we find and support you? How can we find and support you? And apart from sending you a new ring light.
Apart from sending me a new ring light, you can get the book. I'm on the gram at Stay Dancing Dave. What else? Buy books that you love. I don't know.
Yes. I taught a workshop yesterday to high school students in person for the first time in over a year.
Yeah.
And I always am like, hey, if this is something you're interested in, if you're gonna buy the books of people who are alive. Mm-hmm. Chaucer don't need your money. No. I can turn that book into a sandwich. Yeah.
We're ain't out here in these streets.
Yes, exactly. 100%. Well, thank you so much for joining.
Yes.
Hey, so nice to see you.
Yes, it's so nice to be here.
And there they go. Thank you, Dave. Dave Harris again. The book is Patricide. It is also on Button Poetry. All of the poets tonight, including myself, I have books with Button Poetry, and yes, Patricide, and you can find them on Instagram at Stay Dancing Dave. So speaking of Button, who made this lovely book happen. I mean, I made it happen, but like they facilitated it, so we're grateful. Thank you, Button. The first poem that I really was featured with Button Poetry, which started as a YouTube channel and then developed into a small independent press, was a poem about my experiences as a survivor of sexual violence, and that poem and the way in which it resonated with other folks was in many ways what facilitated my tour that first year out of undergrad. And it also led to several realizations about the ways in which our dominant culture not only it often works in service to rape culture and protecting abusers, but how it re-traumatizes survivors, especially in the public eye, as a means to sort of perpetuate this idea of what it means to be the perfect survivor. Often that is, cis, white, and attractive according to cis patriarchal beauty standards, and also non-sexual, right? So this poem is in many ways response to my experiences with that. And also was a poem that I wrote for Milwaukee's own John Ridley for his ABC drama American Crime. This poem was commissioned as a part of that television series. And so shout out to John Ridley and to No Studios. And this poem is called I Am Sure. I have given dozens of interviews on my experience as a survivor of sexual violence. And I am tired. And I am angry. To the several employed journalists who asked me if I was sure that I had been raped. To the true crime reality television producer who told me, you're going to need to give us some more specific details if you are to expect anyone to be able to sympathize with you. Are you sure you don't remember anything else? What are you even sure of? I do not remember what I was wearing. I do not remember how much I had to drink. I do not remember what time it was, how long it lasted, or how he held me. I do remember the word rape never felt like it belonged to me. After the responding officers rolled their eyes, after a family member asked how you could let him get away with it, after you asked me if I was sure. I am sure that I had begun trying to name this trauma before it had even ended, while it was still happening. Accident or mistake or assault or my fault, and I'm sure it felt like every room of my home being broken into at the same time. I'm sure I had to start speaking in metaphor for anyone to start listening. And I'm sure when a person is willing to share the trauma of someone trying to take their body from them, you should not try to take their body from them. I am sure that man and woman is not all a body can be. I am sure several people have misgendered me in the retelling of a story that does not belong to them. Call me a male victim when I am sure I am a trans survivor. There you go, taking my body again. I'm sure it does not matter if a body was an outstretched hand, or if for all the beating it took, it could not form a fist. I am sure it does not matter if they were drunk, or they were aroused, or they were dressed in modesty, or dressed in moonlight. So yeah, I am sure of this. I am sure. This I remember. Remember how I told you. It felt like every room of my home being broken into at the same time. Remember how busy you were trying to figure out how they got in, that you forgot about the person living there. That is, I am sure. So, yeah, that's all to say. Believe survivors, and then also don't police our lives after and if we make our survivorship public. You dig? We're done with that. And to that end, Um, whenever I read poems about my survivorship in a set, it is also very important for me to include poems about my sex and sexuality and sex positivity. And the reason that is I think that too often we're told those two things cannot share space. And the reality is that in many ways, I felt robbed of my ability to talk about sex, talk about my sexuality, uh, after I had been so public as someone who experienced sexual violence, because in some ways those two things were at odds with one another. That talking about my sexuality and my sex was somehow indicative of that tired trope, that people who are sex positive, or sexual in nature, what have you, are in some ways setting themselves up to be victimized, which is bullshit. So I'm going to read some poems about some sexy poems, a sexy poem right now. This sexy poem, I don't know how sexy it is. I'll take it easy for a second. I don't want to get ahead of myself. Was in some ways inspired by, you know, horniness during a global panic cotta, and also relating it back to the running theme of theater in this book, inspired by a play that I was in at the Actors Theater of Louisville called The Many Deaths of Nathan Stubblefield. That was commissioned as part of the New Play Festival, Humana Festival. And so Nathan Stubblefield, for those of you who don't know, was an American inventor who was best known for his early work on what would become the wireless telephone. And in 1908, he received a U.S. patent for the wireless telephone, but he was never able to successfully market his invention, and he ended up going into seclusion and dying alone in 1928. It's a little bit about Nathan Stubblefield. So this poem is called To Nathan Stubblefield, Unrecognized Inventor and Predecessor to Cellular Technology, on Sexting. This is a picture of my genitals, and I am sending it through the air. I know. Holy shit, Nate. I mean, wow. And maybe that wasn't what you had in mind, but look how you've magicked my body into someone else's hand. I know, you imagined us talking, but I shrink at the ringing that calls me to speak. So here is a curated cockshot. Daddy of wireless telephony, the original NSA hookup, who gifted my lonely with a filtered search option. We've got pixels now, and talk to text. I pant into the receiver and a flood of letters spurt across the screen. What? I'm horny, Nate, and I hate the sound of my voice in an otherwise quiet room. You can't bury a magnet in wet dirt without expecting to attract some filth. Come on, Nate, think about it. I've repurposed the invention of my body in hopes that you will invest. Okay. I'm sorry, Nate. I'm sorry I didn't call back. I'm sorry I kept you waiting for a dead phone to ring. Yeah, they can die. I thought you knew. Okay. Real talk, Nate. I too have kissed my ear to the earth, listening for the quiet lovers it's pulled there. A current of voices, a chorus of terrestrial moans, an overcast Kentucky sky. You could burrow your ground coils between my ribs and mine my red marrow lullaby. I think that's what I really, what I've been wanting, Nate. A voice to rock me to sleep, small mouth sounds, an exhalation on the back of my neck watermarking me yours. Sing me a song, Nate. Hum me a little something. Thank you, Nathan. Thank you. Thanks. That's my horny poem about an inventor from the early 20th century in Kentucky. And who says that the intersection of poetry and theater in a full-length debut collection is too niche. Not me. I want to pivot. This is another sexy poem, actually. I don't know how sexy it is. To a poem about sex dreams. And also somehow ethical casting practices in the American theater and the film and television industry. Every time that a straight person has been cast in a queer role as of late, I feel like, I mean, most recently we can think of like James Corden in The Prom and the Golden Globe nomination he received for that insulting caricature of a gay person that he played. I feel like we often, as a collective culture, keep asking ourselves, is this okay? Like, should we still be doing this? Like, every time that discourse gets circulated. And I feel like the continual positing of that question perhaps is some indication that the answer is no. So I'm going to read this poem and then talk about it briefly. This is called Shot List for the Sex Dreams I Keep Having, featuring one of those heterosexual actors who recently starred in a gay film. Shot number 1. Close up on. 2 pairs of disembodied hands furiously fumbling with the belt buckle as if they had had zero prior experience with such a mechanism until this very moment. Shot duration, 1 hour and 36 minutes. Shot 2. Flashback. The first time I see him. In the hallway of his high school, or on a beach off a seaside villa, or across any nondescript room, he is holding the hand of a young girl we understand to be beautiful, even though she doesn't have a face or name. But he wants me. Shot 3. Interior, bedroom, night. Framed by moonlight, he peels the fitted t-shirt from his taut frame. Crawling to me with his pants still on, he lays a finger gingerly to my lips with a shh. Even though I haven't said anything, even though this is my dream, he has been given all the lines. Says, tonight, you are my charity of choice. Call me by any name but your own. Timothy, Nick, Matthew, Tom, Army, Colin, James. Shot 4. Smash cut. He is sitting on the foot of the bed with his head in his hands, utter anguish. Then he calls cut to the empty air, turns to ask me if he fucked up his cue. Says, is the crying supposed to come before, during, or after the sex? Shot 5. Tight on, my face twisted in the anticipation of pain. There is no lube here. In this dream, for some reason, lube was never invented. Lube does not exist in this dream. He spreads my legs and just out of frame my ass and the scratch pad with which he is taking notes. Shot 6. Aerial over the bed. Pillow talk. Coyly he asks, how much do you charge a power bottom? Before I have a chance to reply, he says, oh right, $12.99 for opening night tickets. Shot 7. Wide. He's already redressing in the dark. I don't remember anyone finishing or him arriving in the tuxedo he is now wearing. He flashes the subtlest of smiles. He must think this is still his close-up, as he fastens a leather harness over his formal wear, even though that is categorically not what this harness is for. I wonder where this harness was 4 shots ago. He collects his keys, wallet, and Golden Globe nomination from the dresser, and then, still all the way across the room, thanks me and the community for our bravery, blows me a kiss, gargles, and spits. Cool. What do I want to say about that before I introduce our next lovely poet? Cast queer and trans people in queer and trans roles. It is the difference between visibility, representation, and liberation, right? If we are going to continue to, you can make it keeps getting said, best actor for the role, right? The best actor for the role is someone who is actually entrenched in the community that they are trafficking stories about. As a queer person, I don't just deserve to see stories about me. I deserve to see actual queer people thrive in those roles, not just in the fictions we tell about them. And that's what happens when you cast straight and cis people in queer and trans roles. I'm not given an actual role model. I'm given 90 minutes of a story about someone like me maybe winning. And that's not enough. I'm so excited to introduce Bianca Phipps. How do I talk about Bianca? Bianca Phipps and I went to college together. They are an incredible poet. They have a book of poetry with Button Poetry called Crown Noble. They are also working at the intersection of poetry and theater. They are an incredible actor and writer. Right now, if you're going to check out anything by Bianca Phipps, I highly encourage you to check out their blog, Animorphs Weekly, in which Bianca is currently reading all of the young adult fiction books, Animorphs, in chronological order. If you're unfamiliar with Animorphs, it was a young adult novel series from like the late 90s to early 2000s, and they recap them in incredible detail on their blog, Animorphs Weekly. But I'm sure Bianca can tell you. Oh, they're also currently starring in the podcast, The Pod Is Cast, which is an incredible Dungeons and Dragons sci-fi podcast. Please welcome Bianca Phipps.
Oh, thank you so much. I am so flattered that you wanted to promote the Animorphs blog, which means that I don't have to do that. I'm going to read a couple poems from my book, Crown Noble. I'm really excited to be here. It feels really nice to get to be at this show celebrating Kevin. This poem is called Nina. Nina has the patience to be a pianist. She smiles to hide all her teeth. She puts her left contact in first. She lives in Seattle with her girlfriend and their rescue mutt, Harriet. Nina has a garden that draws all the neighborhood curiosity. Nina works at the elementary school teaching music. Nina is good with numbers. Nina keeps her hair short because Nina didn't braid her self-worth into its length. Nina keeps her hair short because Nina enjoys ease. Nina cries at the movies and everyone hands her a tissue. Nina has 3 siblings because there was no miscarriage. Nina's parents divorced with the same tenderness they used to get married. Nina is honest in therapy. Nina likes to cook for herself. Nina drinks her tea before it gets cold. Nina appreciates process. She fetches fresh vegetables twice a week. It reminds her of her father. Nina doesn't draft his eulogy. Nina calls him. Nina has a good life. Nina knows all good things must come to an end. Nina doesn't write the expiration dates in her planner. Nina likes to say goodbye. Nina has boundaries that bloom like her tulips. She embraces her lover and sleeps without dreams. Nina doesn't carry tension in her shoulders or her jaw or her bite. Nina doesn't search every room for marked exits. Nina is serene. Nina lives in the alternate world where my father won the right to name me. Nina was pulled to the clouds, and I was pressed from the clay. That poem is called Nina. My own troublemaker cat has just decided to wake up from her sweet little nap. So if you hear a small bird chirping, it's just Lady Catelyn being a nuisance. I'm going to read just 2 more poems. I'll keep it brief. This poem is called Lengua. We're all screaming as we play Loteria, and Jack wins again with La Bota. We laugh, and it almost sounds like a family. Mom laughs the loudest. Mom always laughs the loudest, and it's always so quiet when she's gone, and it's always quiet. Everybody tells me I look like my mom, except my mom, who says I look like my dad. We both know what it means. The Tias talk shit about me at Christmas in Spanish, and I smile while they do it. I don't defend myself. I probably deserve it, wouldn't know. I got the wrong tongue. I got all the names for what's wrong with us, but only in Ingles, so... I'm not my grandmother's favorite grandchild, but we are the most alike. Nobody likes me because I am a reflection. Dad always talked about what Grandma conjured. Once, in the night, they all heard a scream that drove him and his siblings and his parents into the hallway. The story goes nobody was there but the family, exposed in their fear. We don't talk about the screams in the night that drive us out of our rooms. We're not supposed to give it the power of a name. The truth is, I look like both my parents, but they don't look at me. I want to talk about the screaming, the absence in the hallway of something else to blame, I want to talk, and I got the wrong tongue, and it conjures all we look away from when the lights turn on. Okay, and that's that poem. I'll just read one more, because time is a finite resource and also a construct. This poem is called Nina Redo. Nina doesn't practice the piano. Nina doesn't eat sweet potatoes. Nina doesn't kiss her girlfriend in secret or in public or at all. Nina doesn't know the taste of her brother's cooking. Nina doesn't praise her father's success. Nina doesn't cherish the melody of her mother's true laugh. Nina doesn't craft her children's middle names. Nina doesn't clip coupons, doesn't tend to the tulips, doesn't walk Harriet twice a day. Nina doesn't learn forgiveness is not a metaphor, but an eternal gift. Nina doesn't have the walks to Blockbuster. Nina doesn't have the drive to Disney World. Nina doesn't press the good memories for preservation. Nina doesn't learn sacrifice is the seed of gratitude. Nina doesn't learn that survival is the sprout of everyone that cried before. Nina doesn't carry her mother's trauma in her locket, her father's grief in her wallet. Nina doesn't carry her parents' love in her spine. Nina can't celebrate her brother's victory. Nina can't call home, call back, call forth. Nina can't live. Nina is the handcrafted portrait of the southern woods at dusk, and I am the view through the window, in motion, untouchable, drenched in the sun. Thanks. That's that poem.
Yes, Bianca. Oh my God. I love you dearly. I miss you so much. I love that Nina suite. What's the name of your book one more time?
The book is called Crown Noble.
And how can we find and support you?
You can find me on Instagram at Bianca Phipps. I also have a Patreon, and if you want to know what's going on in the Animorphs world, you can find that at biancareadsanimorphs.substack.com.
Listen, I get the Animorphs Weekly every week, and I read it, and it's the highlight of my week.
Thank you so much.
And I've never read an Animorphs book.
Me neither. This is my first time, so We're all going on the same journey together. It is
my favorite thing. I think it's funny also that we talked briefly over chat about this show running over. I want you to know all the folks behind the scenes of Milwaukee Rep. It was always going to happen. There was no way we were going to keep it to just an hour. I only have 3 more poems. But that's what happens on Poet Time, because I'm in love with you, and I'm just so happy you got to share space with us. Bianca Phipps, hire them. They're an incredible actor. Buy Crown Noble. Look up Animorphs Weekly. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So just 3 more poems, y'all. I know we tried to keep it to an hour. That was an ambitious goal. So what I want to say about these last 3 poems before I sort of I'm just going to read them in rapid succession as a means to respect everyone's time, is that I think as we are maybe seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, maybe it's a train on the tracks. Who knows? I don't. I'm not a scientist, but you should believe in science. Is that I feel like a lot of this time we are judging ourselves about how productive we've been during this time away or time off, even though it has not been that. We've been literally surviving. And that is such a product of this culture of productivity. It's called capitalism. And I want you all to know that I have been mostly sad. That's the reality that I've been living in. And I'm really excited to get back to work. God, I hope it's soon. I really, really do. But I'm going to carry with me when returning to work, hoping rather to shed something from before, which was this idea that I need to constantly be productive or in service to capitalism. And it's also something I'm going to ask of theater and theater institutions, whom I love and respect and admire. I think too often we've become complacent to some toxic practices in our industry and in our world that are masochistically entrenched in capitalism in regards to telling art, sharing and creating art. I am queer, very, very queer. And I believe my queerness to be inherently anti-capitalist. And the American theater is so entrenched in capitalism that at times it feels as if my queerness is at odds with the American theater. This next poem is inspired by that sentiment. It borrows a line from Shakespeare's As You Like It. All the world's a stage, but here, what is stage but another word for real estate? Our stories come with purse strings tied around their throats. The value of my voice always weighed against the willingness of others to pay the price of admission. What then, when even I cannot afford a ticket? Must choose between the cost of living and the cost of being seen. It does not matter if we would line up around the block, if we cannot line producers' pockets, if all the world's a stage, it is housed within a theater whose marquee has never borne our names. That's all the world's a stage. It has been 371 days since I have been on stage. But who's counting? Me, I'm counting. And I'm really excited to get back. I'm hopeful. I'm excited. And it has been mind-blowing how some institutions, including the Rep, here we are in this digital space, have innovated in some previously thought unimaginable ways as a means to survive during this time. With that in mind, when we return, I expect that some of that innovative energy be transferred to writing and correcting some of the inequities that our industry and so many like ours faces. What some companies and artistic institutions have been able to achieve during this pandemic as a means to stay afloat is incredible. And that energy and innovation needs to be redirected into making these spaces safer for TGNC folk, people of color, Black artists. It's overdue, and it's time. Like if we can all do what we've done these past 10, 11 months, like, yeah. With that in mind, I've also been very curious. Oh shit, my laptop's gonna die. Let me plug it in. I've also been oh, there goes my microphone as well. 1 second. Enamored with these productions that have reimagined productions of like Shakespeare or musicals from the golden age that have featured queerness and people of color in their casts. Think, Oklahoma at OSF, or Oklahoma, frankly, as it was done on Broadway. These are things that excite me, right? But I often think, like, what would the landscape of the American theater look like if instead of just asking marginalized communities to lend their personhood and their bodies to the stories of dead white men as a means to make them more palatable for contemporary audiences? What instead, and in stories, mind you, that often did not make space for us in their origins, and in many cases wished us dead. What if instead of that, because we think that those shows can sell tickets, what if instead of that we actually invested in new work by queer and trans talent, new work by playwrights of color? This poem is called Rewrites. Romeo and Juliet, but this time Juliet does not text back. Romeo embraces his bi-curiosity. He and Mercutio kiss a lot, and no one advises a young girl to drink all that NyQuil. Taming of the Shrew. But this time, no one is expected to belly laugh watching a man starve his wife. And in the end, our fierce femme protagonist pulls a pin out of her fascinator, stabs Petruchio, her so-called lover, in the neck, and goes on to star in the second season of Glow on Netflix. Hamlet. But this time, Hamlet is trans. A non-binary femme doing their makeup, asking themselves to be or not to be. Because what is sitting down to a vanity to paint your hard face in its soft truth for the first time, if not interrogating your own mortality? And this time, the royal family invests in some really good grief counselors. And no one shames the young prince for crying, and the young prince doesn't gaslight their girlfriend, and no one dresses for their daughter's funeral because no one drowns, because no one is stabbed, because no one has to die for us to learn what love is. You and I. But this time, we will not define our worth by how well our bodies retell someone else's story. And we laugh until we cry, and we cry until we laugh, because the binary of comedy and tragedy, like all binaries, cannot hold us. And I am not afraid to be femme, and you are not afraid to text back, and we throw a funeral for shame, and we kiss a lot, and we drown in stars, and in the end, we glow every second of every season. I just have one more poem for y'all. And as my friend Emrys pointed out, I'm perilously worried about the lipstick behind you, Kevin. Is it real lipstick or pocket laser for spies? It is real lipstick. And I will now put it on. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. I've just got one more poem. And just so you know, that last poem was also an unofficial bid for me to play Hamlet. Because that to be or not to be speech is definitely me doing what I just did. To be or not to be. To be. Again, I'll bring back everyone else at the end just so they can say goodbye, plug their books. But again, this has been Please Come Off Book. It's available at buttonpoetry.com. There are still signed copies available for pre-order. I believe like 40 left. It officially releases Tuesday. Thank you so much for joining me in what has been really the first public reading of this debut full-length collection. This last poem is called Final Dress. Imagine instead a beauty free of doubt, the scratch of my stubble and the taste of my lipstick all at once. I am gorgeous and sure of it. A single earring twirling in the tunnel's gust. The train whips into the station, and any car will do. My windowed reflection is green and translucent, and not once do I think sick or ghost. The passenger across from me compliments my eyeshadow because they like the shade, and not because they think me brave. I could tell you where I am heading, or from where I've just come, but I promise it does not matter. Imagine instead, I am the occasion I have dressed for. The door slides ajar. The curtain rises. I step onto the platform. I take center stage. Thank you so much. Again, this has been Please Come Off Book. If we could welcome Dave and Bianca back. Here we are. Thank you all so much for joining me this evening. It has been such a pleasure and a joy to see you both and witness your work.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, so happy to be here.
Yeah. Again, the names of your books and where we can find you.
Crown Noble. You can find me on Instagram at Bianca Phipps, and at Twitter, Bianca J. Phipps. And I have a Patreon. It's also my first and last name.
Cool. and Instagram @StayDancingDave, and books patricide. Got it back from my cat.
Good.
And I'm Kevin Kantor. I am at Kevin_Kantor across all platforms. This is Please Come Off Book. It is available with Button Poetry. We all share a website, buttonpoetry.com. We're all on there. I am so looking forward to the day that we can all be in the same room together, reading poems. I know it is incredibly bizarre to be sitting in front of a device and reading to the empty silence. So thank you for everyone who joined us digitally, near, far, for the whole event or piecemeal. My understanding of that this will be recorded and available perhaps at some later date. Who knows? But thank you so much for joining me. Yay, a book!
Yay!
A book, and I was able to do my lipstick in the camera, which is wild.
Beautiful.
That's how.
Great. Well, thank you, Milwaukee Rep. Thank you to No Studios, and thank you to Button Poetry for all of whom helped in creating this event and hosting us this evening. And to everyone in Milwaukee at the Milwaukee Repertory Theater, I sincerely hope that I will be able to join you again soon on stage and in community with you. I miss you and love you terribly, and I'm sending you all the love and light through this global panini.
Amen.
Panini. Great. Thank you, everyone.
Night.